All right, it's Friday. So let's do this. I never do anything on Friday afternoons, but I am super stoked to be spending this Friday afternoon with you. Don't worry, this isn't going to take all afternoon. And if it's morning where you are or it's nighttime, thanks for joining us whenever you are during your Friday, or I think actually in Deborah's case, your Saturday morning. So if you are from the other side of the world where it is already the weekend, you get serious kudos for being here. But we are going to be talking about pricing and mindset today, and how a really common piece of advice, in fact, an extremely common small business mantra, can actually be helping to keep your business stuck, and what you can do instead, how you can start to shift that mindset, how you can start to think of things in a slightly different way, just a subtle shift, so that you can create a pricing strategy that actually helps you grow your business and make sure you're taking care of yourself in terms of the salary that you earn, the profit that you can draw from the business, the overhead, the money you reinvest for marketing, all that good stuff. We're going to cover all of that today. But yeah, I just want to say again, thanks for being here. I've got a whole bunch of people here in the chat letting us know where they're from, what they do, who they are. If you haven't done that yet and you're here with us live on Crowdcast, please pop into the chat and just say, hey, let us know who you are and what you do, where you're watching from. And if you're watching us over on Facebook, come on over to Crowdcast and join in on the conversation. You can find us at crowdcast.io/co-commercial. You'll find today's event in there, but you'll also find Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesday's event in there as well, because this is part of a 5-day series on mindset. And we're going to actually be capping that off on Wednesday afternoon with a full-length webinar on 3 shifts that you need to make in your mindset to help you grow your business. So I'm really stoked about today's topic, and I kind of want to dive right into that, but I've just got two more little housekeeping things to say. One is that this is pretty informal. This is pretty off the cuff. I'm here to speak my mind on something that I care really, really passionately about. But it's going to be a little free flowy. I've got a nice outline of what I want to cover, but who knows what could happen. And speaking of which, I also want to hear from you, your questions, your responses. So that's why joining us over here on Crowdcast is so awesome. And you can chat along with us. I would love to hear, if things resonate, what your experiences are as I kind of talk through this topic. But we also have this really cool feature on Crowdcast where you can ask a question and I can timestamp our video for those different questions. So if you are here with us live on Crowdcast, you can use the Ask a Question button that is under the video area. And that Ask a Question button will alert me when you have a question. If you do have something that you want me to respond to, the chat is probably not the best place to put it. I try and keep my eye on that, but I talk a lot and I talk fast, and often the chat goes fast and I don't see it all. So if there is a question that you want me to answer at any time throughout today's conversation, go ahead and use that Ask a Question button. And that'll just make sure that what I'm talking about is what you need to hear. Okay. And I see Amy Lippman is here and she says, I'm also passionate about this topic. So glad you're addressing this. I am too. I love this topic. I think I wrote my first blog post on this topic. It's probably been over 5 years ago now. I should have pulled the link up to it before we got started. But it was one of the most popular blog posts I've ever written for a really long time. It probably still is. But yeah, we're going to unpack it today, and I'm going to add a whole lot more experience and knowledge into it that I've gained over those last 5-6 years since I wrote that original blog post. All right. So first things first, we are talking about why charging what you're worth keeps your business stuck. And I know that this you have heard before. You got to charge what you're worth, charge what you're worth, charge what you're worth. Almost without fail, no matter what kind of startup, small business, startup, online business class you take, you're going to hear something like that, especially if you're at all involved in the overlap between the personal development world and the business development world. And maybe maybe this is something that's resonated with you in the past. Maybe it's something that you pride yourself on. Maybe it's something you've really bought into. I'm going to unpack today why I think this is a bad strategy, what you can do instead, and sort of how to rethink things, how to redevelop your understanding of value and worth outside of this idea that is so pervasive in our world. But before we do that, I think that I need to give a really important caveat, which is that I personally believe that the words that we use matter. And in fact, this is it was something I studied in college. It's something I've had an interest in for a very long time. And I think that when we talk about semantics, like when we say, oh, that's just semantics, it doesn't matter. I absolutely think it does matter. What we say, the particular words that we use, how we talk about ourselves, how we talk about our businesses, these kinds of mantras that we use, they affect us at a really, really deep level. So let me give you an example before we dig into this money and pricing topic, because that one's really weighted. So I, about 2 years ago, I got started with a huge lifestyle change around physical fitness and really starting my day every day with some sort of workout, some sort of movement practice. And, as that change has developed, my workouts have gotten harder and harder. And like even today, I really put myself through the ringer with today's workout. And I'm glad that I did. And I feel awesome. But there have certainly been times in this process, in this lifestyle change, in this mindset change around working out and enjoying physical fitness that I might say after a really hard workout, man, that sucked. Right? How many of us have said, oh man, that sucked after a hard HIIT training or any kind of hard workout, maybe just any kind of workout for you feels like, man, that sucked. But when you say that, man, that sucked, what you probably really mean was, wow, that was tough. That was hard. That challenged me. And I think that the difference between those two responses is actually really important. When you say, instead of that sucked, when you say, man, that was tough, sort of the idea that you're reinforcing there is that workout was tough and I made it through. That workout was tough and I conquered it. That workout was tough and I'm better for it, right? There's this very positive personal connection that we have to getting through hard things. But when instead you say, man, that sucked, what you're really saying is working out sucks. I hate this. I'm not good at this. I don't like this. And that kind of a script gets really stuck in our head, and it changes the way we think about the activity that we're doing. And that to me is really important. I want to be the kind of person, and I am the kind of person that pays attention to language and words in that way, because I do really think that it matters. When I say a workout is tough, it makes me feel victorious. It makes me feel challenged. It makes me feel excited. And it makes me want to go back and do it the next day, or maybe 2 days from then if it was really tough. But when I say, man, that sucked, it does not want me to do it the next day, right? It makes me want to sleep in. It makes me want to, it doesn't make me want to do something hard again. It doesn't make me want to challenge myself again. And so that's just an example of just one place where those kinds of language choices really do impact our behavior. They impact our mindset. They impact our emotions around a particular idea. And that then is going to impact the results that you can get. When I say, man, that was a tough workout and I conquered it, I'm going to get better results over time, because I'm probably actually going to continue to chase that feeling, right? Like I want it to get tougher. I want it to be harder. I want to push myself further, as opposed to when you say, oh man, that sucked, your results are going to reflect that attitude. right? So I want to apply the same kind of thinking to our businesses. I want us to be very particular, very clear, very specific about the words that we use to describe ourselves, our identities, our roles, our jobs in our businesses, and the function of our businesses and the different aspects of our businesses. And I can think of no better place to really focus in on this than around pricing, because I think this is one place where you can dramatically shift not only your thinking, but the results that you get from that thinking just by changing the language that you use. So, as you know, here's how that applies to the charging what you're worth mantra, and why I think it's so bad for your business. So first off, the problem is with the word your, right? When you're charging what you're worth, are you trying to put a price tag on yourself? No, you know, you're not trying to put a price tag on yourself. So that's ridiculous. Are you trying to put a price tag on your work? You might be. That might be part of it. But I'm going to argue that putting a price tag on your work is detrimental to the growth of your business. The more you try to price your work, as opposed to the company's work or your team's work or the value to your customers, the more you're reinforcing this idea that it's you that people are buying. So what happens if instead of saying, I charge what I'm worth, or I need to charge what I'm worth, you just change it to, I'm charging what it's worth. I'm charging, I charge what the work my company does is worth. I charge what the product is worth. I charge what this value is worth. When we make that subtle language shift, you can start to really see that you can have some space between the prices that you put on your products or services and your self-worth and self-validation. And so that your piece really is the key to unlocking this particular kind of dangerous mindset. When we're really focused on the your part of charging what you're worth, it reinforces that you are the business. It reinforces that people are paying for you, and it makes your business into a vehicle for self-validation and self-worth. And your business should not be a vehicle for self-validation and self-worth. You may derive some worth and validation from the way you manage your business, from what you've created, from the work that you do, sure. But the business itself does not exist to make you feel better about yourself. The business doesn't exist to make you feel validated. It doesn't exist to prove to you in a number how much you're worth, right? You know that, but still we can come back to this mantra of charging what you're worth. And it really does start to circle back to turning your business into something that's about validating you, about creating self-worth for you. I think the business owners that do pricing really, really well, that really understand how pricing works, the psychology behind pricing, they're people who have immense validation and personal self-worth of their own making, right? They're secure in that, and they're not looking for their business to step into that role. And I know you're right there, right? Like, you are a person who has that kind of validation and self-worth already, that self-validation and self-worth. You're the person that assigns that to you, but it's really easy to slip back into that again when you come back to charging what you're worth, looking at your business as you, making access to you, making a relationship with you part of the business. And so yesterday, we talked a lot about embracing the word company for what you're building, talking about building a company instead of, thinking of yourself as a solopreneur or as a freelancer or even as a small business owner, because there can be so much baggage with those terms. And this is another opportunity, a sort of a different aspect of your business that you can use to reinforce that vision, that you are building something separate from yourself and something that is valuable as separate from yourself. I'm seeing Yeah, Nicole says rate shame is a real thing that we talk about, and the language we use is so important. Nicole, by the way, is someone you should totally seek out, Nicole Lewis Keeber, if this topic resonates with you, because this is part of the very, very important work that she does, helping people redefine their relationships with their business. And that's part of what we're really doing here, is looking at what is the relationship that I have between me, my business, my product, my customers. How do I make that all work really, really well? And that is Nicole Lewis Keeber's work. So if you're not familiar with her, if you're not familiar with her work, and this topic is really hitting home, it's something you want to dive deeper on with someone, I highly recommend checking her out. Oh, good. And she's giving me kudos for unpacking this. Thanks, Nicole. All right, awesome. So let me just make sure that I'm covering everything that I want to cover. Okay, so back to this and how this kind of ties into what we talked about yesterday. And by the way, there's a recording of yesterday's live stream. If you didn't make it, you can go back to that crowdcast.io/co-commercial page. Look not towards the bottom, but under the upcoming events, you'll find past events, and the recording is in there. Or you can just go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Tara McMullen Co. And the recording is up there as well. If you're a co-commercial member, it's inside a co-commercial. We're mindsetting all over the place this week. So going back to kind of what we talked about yesterday, and really making sure that the vision that you have for your business is separate from the vision that you have for yourself, and that you understand you really understand just what you're building with your business. That allows you to take on a different role. When you start seeing yourself as building a company, building something that's separate from you, you start to actually take on a separate identity, a separate role, and you start kind of wearing a new hat in your business. Now you have a little bit of distance. You have a little bit more objectivity. It's not about you anymore. It's about what you're building and who you're building it for. And that gets really, really exciting. But it also starts to actually shift the nitty-gritty pieces of how you price your products. I mean, you can ask yourself, what happens when you look at price through the lens of a founder of a company? What happens when you look at price through the lens of being a founder, of being in that role? How does a founder of a company decide to price their products? And maybe the founder of a larger company doesn't have anything to do with that. But guess what? You have that job too. So how does the founder of your company decide to price your products or your service? How does the leader your company needs approach price? How does that leader think about value, about worth, about price, about transactions? When you start thinking from that identity, from that role of building the company that you really want to have, your ability to price things becomes a lot more objective. You start to say, well, if I'm the founder of this company, then I need to do some research. I need to talk to some people. I need to experiment. I need to see what people are willing to pay, whether that's a little, maybe it's in the middle, maybe it's a lot, maybe it's more than you ever thought someone would pay for something just because you asked for it. But it starts to get a lot more objective, and it starts to get a lot more analytical when you start to look at price through the lens of a founder. It doesn't mean that there's not some art to it still. There's plenty of art to pricing. And I can't get into all of that today. I've talked a lot about that in the past. But I think that the more we transition into this mindset of being the founder of a company, of having a business that is separate from us, we can create the distance and the objectivity and the kind of analytical point of view that we need to price our products and services in a way that's much more helpful to the growth of our business and really allows us to grow our businesses, even if they felt stuck for a while. So, on that note of price becoming more objective, more analytical, I want to talk a little bit about the logistics of actually pricing, because I think that you can't really take the logistics of pricing seriously until you have the right mindset, until your mental game is sort of on point. because a lot of the things that you actually need to consider when it comes to price are things that we shy away from when the business is all about us, or when our vision is still small or uninformed. And so the more of a vision that the more we update our vision and get clarity around that vision, and then the more we step into an identity that allows us distance from our business, the more seriously we can actually take some of these incredibly important logistics to pricing. So the first piece of this is really key, and it's probably something that most of you are not doing. The first thing you need to really think about when you're pricing your products and services is to look at labor as separate from profit. Okay, so when you're pricing your products and services, you need to look at labor as separate from profit. In most small businesses, and definitely in most small online businesses, labor and profit get conflated an awful lot. And what that means is that you get paid to do the work and you get paid the profit of the business. But you don't look at those things as separate. It's just all what's left over, right? Or it's all everything that you can manage to not spend expenses on, right? As much money as you can keep without doling out more expenses. But that's not actually how a company runs. A company has payroll and a company has profit, ideally. And you get paid from both of those buckets as the owner and founder. At least as long as you want to continue getting paid from both of those buckets. Some people choose to only get paid from the profit bucket. But if you're doing work in your business, you should get paid a salary. Now, I don't necessarily mean this in terms of the actual accounting of it, how you report your taxes. There are some very particular guidelines for that, some things that you need to set up in your business if you actually want to separate those things out. But mentally, you should be separating those things. You should be thinking about paying yourself to do the work that you do. That means the work of running the company, managing your team members, creating your products, delivering your service. You get paid to do that work at a fair value. And then you also get paid profit. And the profit is what the money that the business generates above and beyond payroll and expenses, right? You can choose to keep all of that profit. You can choose to reinvest some of that profit, but the profit is what's on top, the money that the business creates outside of payroll and expenses, all the costs of running the business. When you start to see labor and profit separately, you also start to see how you can afford other people's labor or where labor might need to be budgeted for in the future. And this is where that growth aspect of this comes in. So if your business is feeling stuck, or you're feeling like you're just at capacity and you don't know how to make any more money than you're currently making, this might be a contributing factor. If you haven't factored in labor separately from profit in your pricing, there's a good chance that you feel like, I need to hire someone, but I can't afford to hire someone. You should see how you can afford to hire someone with the pricing strategy that you have from day one. Now, most of us have no idea, and so no shame if you were not thinking about this on day one. I certainly was not. But now that's how I have to think about things, or I literally cannot afford to grow my business. I have to think about, how do I pay the labor for the service that we provide, both my labor and my team's labor, and how do I account for profit? How do I make sure that after all the other expenses like technology and just general overhead, that there's something more generated with every sale? That's really important. But like I said, that distinction between labor and profit, you can't really take it seriously until you start to get some distance from your business. If you are your business, then labor and profit don't really need to be separate, or it's just hard to think of them that way. If instead you start to think of your identity as separate from the business, then you can separate those things and you can create room in the budget for other people to get budgeted into labor as well. So very important. Let's see. Okay. The second thing, that first one is probably the biggest piece of this. It's for me, it was the biggest mindset shift or the biggest repercussion of this particular mindset shift that I really, really needed to understand to start pricing more effectively. The second thing the second thing you'll want to factor into pricing is just getting really clear on your overhead. What does it actually cost to deliver the product or service that your company creates and that your customers buy? This is a place, again, where we look at the bills and maybe we don't like to think about the bills because that just feels like that's our money that we're spending. Or maybe we're trying to piecemeal things together to save money because we're not clear on overhead. We're not clear on how that factors into price. So that piece is really important. And all I mean when I say overhead is what it costs to run the business, what it costs to run the company. How do you keep the lights on? What technology to use and how much does that all cost? The third thing you need to think about is how to spend money on marketing and sales to actually make more money. So when you create that distance from your business and you start to think about price more objectively, you can actually start to figure in cost of acquisition. In other words, how much does it cost to go out and find a new customer? And then you can start to think, well, if I just spent that amount of money, could I go and actually find more customers than I have right now? And how much would that cost me in overhead? And how much would that cost me in labor? You can start to get really nerdy with the numbers. And I know that that can be scary a lot of times, but it can also be really exciting. And if you are itching to grow your business, getting nerdy with the numbers is probably something you're, one, going to have to tackle, and two, something eventually you will really get excited about. So that's another piece. Fourth, you can talk to customers about how they use and value what you offer. When you're charging what you're worth, a lot of times you kind of shy away from talking to customers or potential customers about what they think your product or your service is actually worth, because it creates a conversation about what you're worth. And no one wants to hear that they're worth less than they think they're worth, or they're worth less than they want to be worth, right? But when you start to create distance, you can start to have really productive conversations with people about how much they're willing to pay, how the value of what you offer actually plays into their life, how it creates real results for them, whether that's in time or convenience or money. So that's a really important piece of pricing. And you can talk about, or you can think through the labor and profit piece, the overhead piece, the marketing and sales piece, the customer value piece in a much more productive way when you make this mindset shift. And that means that pricing is going to get a lot easier as well. Yes, there's still, like I said, going to be an art to it. There's still going to be some experimentation. There's still going to be some, kind of wiggling to find what the best price is. I'm not going to say that this mindset shift just all of a sudden makes pricing a piece of cake. It absolutely does not, but it does give you a much better toolkit for actually pricing your products and services in a way that supports the growth of your business instead of hindering the growth of your business. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions. So that was most of what I've got planned. Cool. So I'm going to get to these questions. If you have more questions for me on this topic or anything that we covered on yesterday's topic as well, go ahead and use that ask a question button under the video area. If you're over here on Crowdcast, if you're watching us on Facebook, come on over to Crowdcast and ask a question. Go to crowdcast.co/commercial. All right. First question is from Gigi. She says, do you think saying our team is good to say when you do not actually have people working in your business, but use other businesses to produce your product? For instance, I use a great photo lab for my photographic art business. Are they my team, or should I say they are something else? Yeah, you can totally say our team when you have companies, tools, contractors that you trust like a team member. That is in no way disingenuous. Another way that you can talk about a situation like that, though, is to talk about them as partners. And that's often a phrase that I use for people that I kind of rely on as part of our team, but that I don't pay outside of maybe like they provide me a SaaS application or maybe they're promotional partners. So for instance, our friends at Mighty Networks who create the platform that Co-Commercial is built on, I refer to them as our partners all the time. And we do have some formal relationships, a relationship where they are literally our partners. But even if we didn't have that, I'd still say our partners because we know those people, we trust those people, we like those people, we like their product. They're integral to the to how we run our business right now. And so they're our partners. They're part of our team. I feel the same way about the folks at Creative Live. The folks here at Crowdcast, I think they're our partners as well. It would be really hard to run our business the way it runs right now without an awesome service like Crowdcast. And we have relationships with their team as well. So they're our partners too. But I think, in this specific case, Gigi, I think that's a fine way to think about them and talk about them is as team members. And you can kind of think about the way you pay them as, I wouldn't think about it as payroll, but you can think of it, obviously it's cost of goods, but at the same time, like I think it's valuable to you to value that personal relationship as well as sort of the transactional relationship there. And I do think that absolutely plays into the financial mindset around how you work with them as well. Oh, Jennifer, this is a great question from Jennifer. She says, how would you suggest researching pricing when you're surrounded by a sort of race to the bottom on Etsy? Okay. It's been a really long time since I've been asked this question, but I used to get asked this question all the damn time. Specifically when I was talking a lot about Etsy and a lot about pricing, because that used to be my jam. So the first thing to think of the first thing to realize is that Etsy is a false market. We think of it as a market because there are buyers there and there are sellers there, but it's not really the market. It is a distribution channel. And so you want to actually look at the market, which is all the people who are buying your product. Now, I happen to know Jennifer's business. She creates these really cool game cards for wedding receptions and for all sorts of parties. And it's Little Hammer, right, Jennifer? I feel horrible that I'm pretty sure it's Little Hammer Games. Just double, like, give me a yes that I got that right so that people know where to find you. Yes, Little Hammer Games. So if you're at all curious, go check out Little Hammer Games. But for you, Jennifer, you want to look more at the wedding market. Doing pricing research on Etsy is bad news. Don't do that. Just don't even bother. There are so many places that you can go to find out what people are paying for all sorts of things wedding related. You're going to have a much better time finding good pricing research on wedding blogs, on wedding websites, on Instagram. Now that might mean that sometimes you get redirected back to a product on Etsy. That's good to know, but you don't want to look at Etsy as the marketplace because Etsy is not your market. Etsy is just a distribution channel that you're currently using to get in front of some people, but mostly you're using it as an e-commerce platform, right? Maybe that's even a better way to think of it than as a distribution channel, is actually as an e-commerce platform. You're just using it as a checkout. If people find you there and they buy, awesome. But really, I know the way you're thinking about things. You're thinking about how to draw people in, how to get your brand in front of people who maybe wouldn't see it on Etsy. So just think of it as a shopping cart, essentially. And then that means you need to look at where the real market is to do that research on price. Cool. Yeah, so she says, that's a great point. I don't think of Shopify sites as a market. Yeah, so I think, and this is something I've been literally advising Etsy sellers for years, is if you're going to be on Etsy, think about Etsy as a website, your website, preferably you have another website, but think of it as a website that you have some control over, and mostly just think about it as an easy way for people to check out, because it's just like people shopping on race. There is a race to the bottom on Amazon. There's also plenty of people paying full price or more for stuff on Amazon, but probably that's happening because those products are being marketed in a different way. They're being branded in a different way. They're being represented in a different way so that people land on Amazon and then buy because it's just easy. It's easy to buy from Amazon, right? Most of us literally need to click that one click button and then it's at our house in 2 days. So that's how I would consider that. If you got any other questions on mindset and pricing and why we are no longer charging what you're worth, why you are banishing that phrase from your thought processes, go ahead and use the ask a question button under the video area. Otherwise, I'll give you a preview of what's coming up Monday. So on Monday, we're going to talk about the difference between magic and technology and what that has to do with your business and its greatest asset and how you can better take advantage of your business's greatest asset to grow your business. And yes, this is absolutely related to mindset as well. It's what we're talking about for the next, 4 days now, 3 days now. And so that is going to be Monday at 2. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, the times are a little different. So just check us out again at crowdcast.io/co-commercial. You can get the rundown on everything that we've got coming up, plus the webinar that we're going to be doing. So we're going to be talking about the difference between magic and technology. If you want more on this mindset and mental game aspect to growing a business, you can check out my new book. It's called Subtle, The Small Shifts That Lead to Big Results. And you can find that at cocommercial.co/subtle, cocommercial.co/subtle. Otherwise, looks like that's it for questions for today. So hopefully I will see all of you back here. Oh, nope, there, I take that back. Jill says, how can we start watching from the beginning? In just a minute here, when I do wrap up, when the live portion is over, the recording will come up automatically or just refresh in a minute or two, and it'll be here waiting for you, and you can start watching from the beginning. You just can't rewind during a live event. Vida says, what are your thoughts on starting out providing a one-to-one service coaching at a lower price and then raising the prices as your service becomes a greater demand as people become aware of your work locally? Okay, so I have mixed feelings about this, Vida, but this is a great question. Okay, so first and foremost, I want you to, again, you're going to put on that mindset of creating some distance between you and the business. So you are not the business. The business is creating a service. You just happen to be providing that service. But the business is providing a service, and probably that service, there's already a market for it, right? There's already other companies providing that service as well. If you have a company that provides a service that is completely different or is completely unique from anything else that's out there, that's a separate problem. We'll get to that in a minute. Hopefully, remind me. But most likely, there is some other version of the service that you offer, that your company offers out there on the market already. It does not help you very much to price significantly lower than other companies offering that service, because people are going to notice that. And what do you think when you see something on the shelf that's dramatically lower in price than everything else that looks just like it? You assume there's something wrong with it, right? And so what I find is that when people are starting out, not only do they kind of price lower and people end up thinking there's something wrong with it, but you actually think there's something wrong with you. You think that being new is something wrong, that it's something bad. There's nothing wrong with being new. Sure, maybe you need to experiment a little bit more. Maybe you need a little more training. That's different. That's a different phase of your business. yeah, that's not something where I would be like marketing a service. That's something where I would be going out and kind of handpicking the right people to experiment with and saying, hey, I'm working with a beta group, or I'm working with my initial set of 10 clients and I'm offering them half off my normal rate. That's a very different prospect. I'm totally fine with that. But you're saying my normal rate is X, and normal rate is in line with the going market rate, what other people are charging. So I think that, your question around demand is also interesting, because I think that it assumes that, it kind of assumes that uniqueness, right? That I was talking about earlier. There is already demand. What there isn't is awareness of what you do. And you don't need price. You don't need your price to be artificially lower to build awareness. You need marketing. You need conversations. You need relationship building. You need networking. Those are the things that are going to build awareness for your company in a market where there's already demand. Okay. So remember that there's already demand. And if you're in, okay, so let me get back to this other piece though. If you are delivering a service that is unique or new, truly, that there isn't anyone else out there doing it, I want you to rethink whether that's a good idea. It is extremely expensive to create something new. And the truth is, there are very little things that are actually new. You might have a new spin on something old. You might have a new methodology for something that's already established, but you don't really have something new. So instead of saying, oh, that's a bad idea, because I don't think it's actually a bad idea, you just need to spend a little bit more time figuring out where the real market is. What is the real market? Where is there already demand for this? And then you actually have a advantage in the market, because you can go into that old market where there's existing demand and you can say, I have a new way to do this, or I have a different way to do this, and here's why it's better. Oh boy. Now talk about awareness. Now you can build awareness, because different, as Sally Hogshead says, is better than better. Different is better than new. Different helps you create a unique selling proposition, a unique value proposition that gets people talking, that gets them interested, that makes them want to have kind of a new relationship with you as a business owner, or a relationship with the business that you own. And that's really exciting. But again, price has nothing to do with that. You do not need to lower your price to generate that awareness. You just need to generate awareness through marketing, through networking, through relationship building. Jody says, yes, but how do you justify prices when you have experience? Experience plays into pricing, right? Not necessarily. In some markets, some experience plays into pricing, but there are, let me give an example of this that is as objective as I possibly can. Let's say you're an accountant and you are opening an accounting firm, a brand new accounting firm. You know how to do all of the accounting. You've got your CPA certification, your license, however that works. You're a CPA. And you're opening a new CPA firm and you're offering CPA services. Does one CPA's experience versus another CPA's experience justify a significantly different price? Maybe a slightly different price, but not a significantly different price. And what I see is a lot of people who say, oh, I'm new at this, or I don't have enough experience, charging significantly less, half, a third of what the going rate is. That's not at all helpful. Yes, experience can help you justify a higher price, but that's how I would look at it. Instead of looking at less experience justifying a lower rate, I'd look at more experience justifying a higher rate. So think about the market as having a going rate. You want to be right around that going rate, regardless of your experience, because regardless of your experience, you're in business to create results, and those results have value, and pricing is based on that value, partially. And then all the other things I talked about earlier. But let's say you have experience with a particular kind of business as this CPA. So you're a CPA and you specialize in dairy farmers. I live in central Pennsylvania. There's a lot of dairy farmers here, so forgive me. So you're a CPA that specializes in dairy farmers. You could justify a higher price with dairy farmers because you can say, well, I'm not going to bother you with all the stuff that you don't need to know. I know exactly how your business runs. I know exactly the things that you're thinking about. And so you can justify a higher price because you have a specialty in that market, and that helps you drive different results for that particular group of people. So that justifies a higher price, but less experience, to my mind, does not justify a lower price, because results are really what justifies price. As long as you're getting results, that's what's valuable. Oh, good. I'm glad that's hitting home. Cool. Just checking the chat to see if there's anything else I want to cover here first. I can't believe I talked for 45 minutes on this topic. Actually, I can. No. All right. Looks like that's good. Okay. So again, Monday, 2:00, same place. We're going to be here on Crowdcast, or you can watch on Facebook Live. And we're going to be talking about the difference between magic and technology and the greatest asset that your business has and how to take advantage of it. Once again, if this mindset stuff has got you excited, check out my new book called Subtle. It's at cocommercial.co/subtle. And that's it. Have a great weekend. And hopefully I'll see you Monday afternoon. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.